Okay, so after I finished making the last episode, I decided to go make some more money from the Venti dealer. And after I made that money, I found out that the van was now available to take from Windows Inspection Shop, which is great for what I need for this episode. This episode, I'll be showing you guys all the locations for all of the GT parts, with the exception of one. But I did find it in this episode, but I'll give you an explanation later. The first location is by the Venti Shack, which I showcased in my first episode, which is of course the GT rims. After collecting the GT rims, I decided to head over to Fleetari's so he could put some tires on it. After all, the tires I have on the car right now are absolutely trash, so it's just a good idea to do it anyway. After I've paid for my order for the new tires, there are a couple parts you can find around the repair shop as well. If you go around the left side of the building from the front, there is the GT rocker cover and the GT steering wheel. Now, personally, I'm not really a big fan of the GT wheel. I don't really like the whole wood grain thing they got going on for it. I prefer a leather wrap steering wheel, but to each their own, I guess. And then on the right side of the building, these aren't really exactly GT parts, but they are parts you can put on the car, which include the long coil springs. Now, I never put these on the car, but according to the wiki, they do help a little bit with the rally in some cases. But I mostly don't put them on because it makes the car look super weird with the raised up rear end. The other part you can find behind on the right side of the building is the radar buster, which is basically to help you detect whether or not there's a police checkpoint on the highway. I remember the days when this part didn't spawn here, actually. It used to spawn right in your house, but I think it was one of the more recent updates that it no longer spawns inside your house when you start a new save. On the way to the next location, I decided to make a quick pit stop and stop at the house. I went to go order some parts in the catalog, including the dual racing carbs, or dual GT carbs, the racing flywheel, and the performance radiator. The next GT parts location will be for the GT grille and the GT RPM gauge. It's located right along off the dirt track here if you're going past Grandma's house. And this is also one of the spawn locations for a junk vehicle. Now, personally, I remember there was a time when junk cars weren't randomized in the game. And personally, this is one of the spots where the wrecked Satsuma can spawn. And I think that's supposed to be the canonical spot where it spawns, because that's where you get the GT shifter and the spare wheel. And I feel like there's some kind of lore behind it too. Like maybe your dad had a Satsuma before the one that you have in the game, or maybe he crashed it here or something. Or maybe it was even his car, maybe it was someone else's car that they were practicing for the rally and they crashed the car, and whatever parts you find here, what got left behind. Fun fact about the GT Grill also, the GT Grill has better airflow than the stock grill, so if you intend on keeping the stock radiator, it does provide a bit better cooling, though honestly just taking the grill off entirely provides better cooling too, so you could always do that. And then we just grab the GT RPM gauge. Okay, so to find the GT shifter and the spare wheel is going to be the trickiest part, because it's all randomized. Whenever you start a new game, all of the wrecked cars are all randomized and they're not in the same location. Now, what you're seeing on screen right now is a map. Now it includes all the different locations, but also includes the locations for possible spawns for the junk cars in the map. The blue dots are the possible spawn locations for all of the junk cars you can find in the map. There's only, I think, like 4 of them, and one of them is the Satsuma. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go over every single location because, frankly, that would take way too long. And also, I'm not going to probably cover many locations at all, to be honest. But I will tell you that the locations I've found where the Satsuma spawns is usually by the dirt track, as I said earlier, top of the ski hill, underneath the bridge, and I think and also at the landfill and buy the drag strip. So we're going to probably start with some of those locations and see if I can find it. After getting all the parts, I decided to head in for the night, because by the time I got back to town, it was pretty late. Now, usually I would just sleep at the shop, but considering it was Thursday, I couldn't do that. For some reason, if you're anywhere near the shop before and after midnight, Tembo's shop doesn't restock. So instead I opted to sleep on this moldy-ass couch at the landfill. When I awoke the next morning, I decided to go look in the landfill to see if the car was there, as the landfill is one of the locations where junk cars can spawn. And just my luck, the Satsuma was indeed at the landfill. Now, as I said before, your mileage may vary because it's all randomized. I just happened to get incredibly lucky in finding where my junk Satsuma was. With that, you get the spare wheel, which isn't really a GT part, but it's always good to have. And of course, the coveted GT Shifter. Now, I'm gonna make a hot take here and say I don't like the GT Shifter that much, to be honest. I don't really care much for the look of it. It's not because it's wood grain. It's just it feels like it's just it could be a bit bigger and like take up more space because there's gaps, like and stuff like that. It doesn't really like fit or like line up with the rest of the dash. Now, personally, I prefer the center console from the Satsuma LX mod, which features a voltmeter and oil pressure gauge. With that out of the way, you can pick up your Satsuma GT wheels from Futari. I will give you a brief tip actually. If for some reason you get your tires done on a Friday and you want to pick them up during Saturday, but you can't, you can actually leave the tires outside of his shop and they will still get finished regardless if they're inside or not. So it's a good tip if you don't want to wait till Monday to pick them up again. And that is pretty much it. It is the complete guide on how to get every GT part for the Satsuma, including the long coil springs, radar buster, and of course the spare wheel. So I hope this is going to be like one of the little shorter ones that I've made in the meantime while I make a longer form guide. Like probably my next guide will probably be the inspection guide, and then after that I will probably do the combine harvester delivery job, because I got a call about that off camera. So thanks for watching, guys, and have a good weekend.